Let's talk about the Intrapreneur's process. What's an entrepreneur? Glad you asked. An entrepreneur is an individual inside an established organization who champions a new product, a new service, or some other strategic initiative that adds value to the firm. They share many of the same characteristics of an entrepreneur and many of the same challenges. They do have an established funding source, the company they work for, but they have to compete for funding with other good ideas that other entrepreneurs are putting forth. We'll step through the process that organizations go through to select strategic initiatives. I think you'll see a similarity, particularly when it comes to the business case between the entrepreneur's process and that of the entrepreneurs. One of the things that we're going to talk about is the product stage gate review. This is one of the things that good companies do. Now, this may seem bureaucratic, and we'll talk a little bit about that and what keeps this, when done correctly, what keeps this from being just more bureaucracy and really a means that an organization can focus. Organizations, in my opinion, in my experience, organizations don't fail because they try to do too little. It's really that they try to do too much. And they end up diluting their resources across a lot of different opportunities, not really willing to or understanding which particular opportunity to place a bet on, which opportunity will actually advance the cause of the organization. And the reason they don't do that is because they don't have a process that actually allows them to focus on those items, those projects, those initiatives that will give them the best return, as opposed to just basically accepting all the new things as being equal in value and equal in weight and equal in terms of driving the organization forward, when in fact we all probably know that that's not true. It all starts with an idea to generate some sort of additional value for the organization. And the actual first gate is to take that idea and understand, is it technically feasible, and is it economically interesting? This is a very high-level gate, and it's usually accomplished with a conversation with your boss or with some other individuals that basically says, I've had this idea, and this is what I think we should do. And then you have an informal conversation of whether or not this particular idea of yours is something that the organization could actually pull off. If it did pull it off, would it provide some sort of value for the firm? And getting through this gate actually allows you to go on to the next stage, which is to take that idea and actually develop a business case. And many of the same things that we talked about that venture capitalists look for in an entrepreneur's business case apply here as well. So we won't rehash those. But then you go through the next gate. And that's basically, is there the value there? Is there the value to the organization? Would you expect it to have a good return on investment? Is there funding available? And is there resources available, the right resources to actually do the job? And then, is there a strategic fit? Return on investment? Do we have the money? Do we have the right expertise? And are they not otherwise engaged? And does it fit with the strategic direction of the organization? And passing through that gate allows you to start the development process. Now, the development process has its own internal process all of its own, which has a couple of gates as well. The first is to develop a prototype. What a prototype does is confirm that the particular product, service, or initiative actually is feasible. Can it be done? Can we build it? Can we create it? Can we service it? Can we actually make this work? And then you go out and, assuming that the prototype says, yep, we can do this, then you go out and do a market trial. And the market trial confirms that the user feature and functionalities are there. So this basically is actually sending it out to the market and seeing if, in fact, it survives in the field? Will it satisfy customers' desires, needs? Will it work appropriately in a customer environment? Interestingly enough, Columbus, Ohio is oftentimes used as a city to do these sorts of market trials. Many believe that Columbus, Ohio represents the typical American city. And then, once you've confirmed that, in fact, the features and functions will, in fact, work and has some level of attractiveness to the consumer base, then you actually do some market research. You take that information through your market trial and try to extrapolate that out to a much broader audience to make sure that if you actually go out and develop this, that it will operate and appeal at scale. So you do market research to identify and understand, will this particular product service have a much broader appeal beyond just the area in which you did the market trial. And in this particular stage, to make it to the next stage, is where you want to kind of confirm the financials. Is the budget to actually produce this particular product or service, does it make sense? Is it expected to get the return on investment that we would anticipate? So assuming you pass that gate, then you go on to the next level, which is assuming again that you're going to be on time and within the budget, and you confirmed all the other assumptions in your business case. You do, in many cases, a pilot or a limited launch. Many organizations, most notably Apple, skip this stage. But many organizations do, in fact, pilot the product as designed in a geographic or other type of market to actually see if in fact there is the customer acceptance, and also you want to basically validate that you can produce this particular product or service and operate it at scale. So you might actually launch a particular product or service in a large metropolitan area like Seattle or New York or San Francisco, and then take that information to see if it in fact validates and justifies it launching your product nationally, which is the next stage, is to launch the product on a national scale, which then you pass the last gate. Was the launch successful? You do a post-launch review, and did you actually realize the return on investment? Did you generate the value for the company that you expected to get? This project gate review process is critical, that you don't turn this product funnel into a tunnel. What that means is that at each gate you have to produce and establish the effective decision points. Leadership has to be willing to stop projects that in fact don't meet your decision criteria. And what you want to do is use predetermined decision criteria and a method of scoring before you enter into this process, because you want to be able to objectively evaluate whether or not product or service meets the criteria established for each of the gates that the product needs to pass through. At each gate, you have to have the must-meet criteria, meaning these things it must have, yes or no, it's binary, must have, in order to go on to the next stage. Things like strategic fit or some sort of minimum return on investment. If it doesn't meet this criteria, if the answer is no, the product or service initiative stops. Then there are some should-be criteria. These are relative criteria such as market attractiveness, synergies with the other product line, profitability, and on the should-meet criteria, you basically score this on a scale of 1 to 10. And here is where you compare a given product or service initiative with the other product and service initiatives still in the development cycle, and you make decisions on whether or not you should proceed with the particular product or service under question or kill it in favor of something else. For example, you have 3 particular products going through the stage gate review process. 2 of them have a return on investment under 150%. The third project has a return on investment greater than 200%, and you only have enough resource to actually do one of those 3 projects. Obviously, you pick the one that gives you the highest return on investment. Again, Companies and organizations fail not because they try to do too little, but because they try to do too much. If you were to let all three of those go through and go on to the next stage, you would be diluting your resource, not focusing on the highest best opportunity, and in fact what you could have, instead of having one product do quite well, you have essentially three mediocre products going through the process, or perhaps even three failures going through the process because you refuse to focus. Focus is incredibly important in this whole process. There are actually two decision points for each gate. There is either a go, no go, stop the project, kill the project, or proceed ahead. Or you might actually say, let's proceed ahead, and these others, let's put them on hold for now. Let's manage these projects, these product or service initiatives as a portfolio. We'll pick and do the best one of the bunch now, understanding that these others complement the overall strategy of the firm, and then we'll hold these others for the moment while the best product or service proceeds through the next level of the process. And then we'll come back to these others and choose the next best one and proceed ahead. You can actually kill something outright, saying this doesn't meet our criteria, we are not going to do this, period, end of story, or we're going to do this one and we're going to put these others on hold. You have to adopt this process to the project size. Not all initiatives need to actually go through all the level of detail. You have to somewhat use your own judgment in that regard. And then finally, there is an issue, and that is the time to market. This process takes time. If you have a competitor that is actually better at going through this process, or takes shortcuts, or for whatever reason is further along in the process, you may in fact lose out if you apply the rigor and then in fact miss out on the key timing that's so critical in releasing new products or services. One of the other ways to deal with time to market is to develop a roadmap, develop a particular product or service initiative that will evolve over time. And you might come out with a version 1.0, which provides the base functionality. That, in fact, actually has some sort of appeal in the marketplace. You're able to gain some sales, generate some revenue, generate some interest in terms of your particular product. For example, you might have an e-reader. That's all it does at the moment. Put that out in the market. Then you might come up with your version 1.1, which in fact take advantage of the lessons learned from version 1.0, provide some enhanced functionality, fix a few things, make a few things better, that sort of thing, re-release the product, again with gaining incremental revenue, incremental sales, which then goes on to the next stage, which is the version 2.0, where in fact you take the additional lessons learned and perhaps redesign the product. Again, in the whole e-reader space, you might actually say, why don't we just add a little bit more functionality and not only be able to provide this device, provide access to ebook content, but perhaps movies or television shows and the ability to surf the web. That sort of thing. What this does is it creates a staged product, service, or process improvement plan where each version or stage funds the next one. And this can work for products, it can work for services, or it can even work for process improvements. What it does do is provide a strategic view for the development efforts. You know that you're going to be going down this particular roadmap, and you can plan ahead. And in fact, there are companies that actually make this sort of roadmap public so that people understand, particularly in the area of software, that upgrades will be coming and then they can buy now and take advantage of buying the particular software now with the idea that when new versions come out, you will be automatically upgraded. We're going to take a break here and we're going to talk a little bit more about the whole issue of time to market. I do want to make one point is Tom Peters of In Search of Excellence fame talks about fast failure. His notion is that it's important to get products out there quickly. If they don't work, to bring them back in-house and actually fix the product feature deficiencies or the service deficiencies quickly and re-release it. That's one theory of how to do product development. We're going to talk about the agile development versus a waterfall approach next, along with Scrum. We're going to stop here and conclude with part one of the Intrapreneur's process, and we will come back shortly to part two.